Hey, gluten-free friends, it's Liquidy again, and welcome to another live edition of the Travel Gluten-Free podcast on Nourish Festival. I'm excited to bring you these live videos because I was planning on making them anyway, but it's great because the Nourish Festival gave me the opportunity to do them all in just 3 days. So I hope you're having fun if you are viewing this during the Nourish Festival. There's lots of great classes. I saw Angela's cinnamon roll class this morning, which made me super hungry for cinnamon rolls. And I totally want to make her cinnamon rolls now because they looked amazing. And I've been craving cinnamon rolls lately. And yeah, so definitely check out these workshops and visit Angela's booth for cinnamon rolls. That was amazing. And definitely visit the Kapop booth. That is booth 86. And they are the official sponsor, the official snack of the Guide to Traveling Gluten-Free. So definitely check them out as well. All right, my friends. So today, right now, we are doing our Saturday live. If you're new to gluten-free, what should you know? And these are 5 essential tips that you should know if you're new to gluten-free or anybody that's gluten-free. But these are basically 5 essential tips that I wish I knew when I became gluten-free, because it would have made my life a lot easier and I would have skipped a couple of glutenings for sure. So anyway, 5 things you definitely need to know if you are gluten-free. So number 1 is never assume that any food is gluten-free. As weird as that sounds, because like you may think, oh, this is toothpaste. Of course it's gluten-free. No, it's not gluten-free. And you might think, oh, it's a skin cosmetic. There's no gluten in it. No, there's more likely chance of having gluten in it than not. And you might think that it's just meat. It's not going to have gluten in it. Well, meats contain marinades a lot of times, and the marinades are what has the gluten. So naturally, a lot of foods are gluten-free. But when people like create recipes, that's when gluten is added to those things, like meat and fish and vegetables are all naturally gluten-free. But then when you add marinades to them, that's when the chance of having gluten come into the recipe follows. So never assume anything is gluten-free, even if it is fish. Always ask the server if you're at a restaurant, or definitely be a label reader. If you're gluten-free, you need one of the essential things you need to do is to learn how to label read. So label read everything, even if it says gluten-free on the front, which comes to my which also goes in with never assume anything is gluten-free. Even if it's labeled gluten-free, still read the ingredients, because there have been products on the US market more than European or other markets. But there have been products that have been put on the shelf. They say gluten-free on the front, and then you flip open the label and it says it contains wheat, which obviously it's not gluten-free. So you can't trust that. It just says gluten-free label. The certified gluten-free label you can trust. And I go more into that in my book, The Guide to Traveling Gluten-Free. But if it just is labeled gluten-free without the certification, don't trust the label, read the ingredients still, because it might still have gluten in it and they may not have pulled it off the shelf yet, or it might have gluten in it. Like one of the things, MSG, it bothers me really bad, but it'll say it doesn't contain gluten and it has MSG in it. So I always read the label anyway. All right, number 2 tip is look for a certified gluten-free seal. That means it is safe for celiacs. So if you're celiac, like I am and my daughter, then that means that if you see that little circle with the GF, and there's 2 other gluten-free certifications, if it's certified, that means it's safe for celiacs to eat, because it's either under 20 parts per million, under 10, or under 5, depending on the certification, especially if it has oats in it, because oats can contain gluten from cross-contamination very easily. So if it's certified gluten-free, look for that. You know it is safe if you're celiac. All right, tip number 3 is Chinese food is dangerous. If you are new to gluten-free, I would avoid Chinese and pretty much Japanese food altogether for the first 3 months, because Chinese food, first of all, you have the language barrier. A lot of times, many of the servers do not speak English as their primary language, which is fine because you know it's an authentic place. And they're going to probably hire a lot of family members, and they may be first-generation Americans, which is awesome. But the language barrier can be a big issue sometimes, depending on the restaurant, especially if it's Spanish to English, it's not that big of a deal. But when you're talking about a language that uses symbols as opposed to letters, like Greek letters like we do, that can be a bigger deal, and you can more easily get contaminated. A lot of fish marinades in Chinese and Japanese food contain soy sauce, and soy sauce in America has gluten in it. So you definitely you want to avoid Chinese food and Japanese food for the first 3 months that you know you're gluten-free, because it's just going to be too hard to navigate and too easy to get gluten. By the way, if you have any questions while I'm on the live, definitely throw them in the chat, the live chat down here. Number 4 is carry food with you when you travel. If you are new to celiac disease, airports suck as far as offering gluten-free food. And a lot of times, if you are traveling in rural areas, like I travel in Utah a lot, and some of these cities have 100 people in them, and they're literally just you drive through a half mile of houses on either side, and that's the town. And so, obviously, those places you're not going to get gluten-free food. And so, make sure you carry food with you wherever you go. I go extensively into that in my book, The Guide to Traveling Gluten-Free, and talk about specific types of food, how you should pack your food for travel, and all that good stuff. Number 5 is, amazingly enough, even though it is named buckwheat, it does not contain gluten. So I'm a little fuzzy on why, but I know buckwheat is a seed flour. So it's made from a seed, and that seed does not contain gluten. I believe it's rhubarb seed is where buckwheat comes from. But buckwheat is amazing. It tastes really good. And it's especially, I love using buckwheat, especially in the fall, because it has a very earthy, it actually has a very similar taste to like stone ground wheat, like that very hearty, like earthy wheat taste. But it has no gluten in it whatsoever. But you do need to be careful if you order like buckwheat bread somewhere, because they can also mix wheat bread in with it. So if it says buckwheat bread on a menu somewhere, or something says it's buckwheat pancakes, always double check to make sure that there's no gluten flours in there, because a lot of times they'll mix wheat or barley or whatever, sometimes oat flour. So if you're a sensitive celiac, you would definitely want to stay away from oat flour. And just to make sure that it's just buckwheat and it doesn't have any gluten containing grains. So buckwheat does not contain wheat or gluten. Amazingly enough, you can use it. I used it to make these amazing rolls last week, which were super delicious. And I need to write that recipe down in my book so I don't forget it. And I can put that on my Instagram for you all. And if you want to meet me on Instagram, by the way, it's at Travel Gluten Free Podcast. That is where I'm the most active for sure. Message me there. I would love to get to know you better. And I hope you're having a wonderful time at the Nourish Festival. If you're seeing this at Nourish, if you're not seeing this at the Nourish Festival, you can definitely check out my book. It may be I have a special pricing on it because it's just new and it's out. So double check the date on this video if you're watching this. But definitely grab The Guide to Traveling Gluten-Free. It's an amazing book. I spent over like almost 2 years putting together all the information in it to have one place you can go to find out how to travel gluten-free. And I put a lot of time and effort into it to help others so that you can have your freedom while you travel. Because isn't that why we all go on vacation? Because it makes us feel free and wonderful and relaxed. And having celiac disease, it puts a little bit of anxiety into travel. But hopefully with my book, that will really lessen your anxiety so that you don't have that anxiety to travel, because you have the information you need to know to travel without anxiety. So, all right, my friends, remember to enjoy food, enjoy travel, enjoy life. Check out an episode of the Travel Gluten-Free Podcast. I hope you're having a wonderful day, and I hope to see you at my next live.